I'm from Compton, California, and the issues in this film kind of take us around the world. When I was shooting, you know, we did some of it here in the United States. We went to Berlin, we went to Delhi, and I really started to understand how this idea about caste, you know, is global.
That's it. That's what it is on him.
You know, it doesn't matter where you are, on either side of the coast, on either side of the country, on either side of the world, it still functions in this way. So who here had a sense of what caste was before they saw the film? Okay. Was your definition of what it was going in the same as what it was when you left?
My perspective of it changed after watching the movie. I definitely had the idea of it. I just didn't have the terminology and the words to put to those thoughts, because to me, I was raised knowing like there's nothing new under the sun. Everything that happens will happen again. So I'm like, oh, this is just the way world works, but there's actually a system and structure. So that's what the movie taught me watching.
That some of these enduring systems, just by a name that you didn't have the language for just yet.
Right.
Got you, got you.
I would say Isabel really expanded the idea of caste, because I grew up thinking caste was part of the Hindu religion. I knew the idea there was the Brahmin, the Dalits, and between that there are other different hierarchies. But when Isabel connected caste in her life within slavery, her own life, the Holocaust, even within, when she also talked about that it can apply to gender, it can apply to race, and even just any groups of people, you start realizing that caste, it's a word, it's a label. There's so many labels, but when you expand on it, when you think more deeper, you realize, oh, this all connects.
I learned about the caste system like in Indian culture, but I never thought to even think that something else was based off of that, or what we think of as racism is really the caste system, or even Germany and what happened in the Holocaust was ever a part of it. Like that never crossed my mind.
Right.
I would have never even thought to put them together.
To define it like that.
Exactly. So after seeing the film, I'm like, wait, and not even only in Indian culture and in the Holocaust and in Black American culture, but this happens everywhere, and anywhere that there's discriminatory practices, it's the caste system.
Yes, I know Ebony magazine. Dr. King wrote about India in Ebony?
Yes. July 1959. It is quite extraordinary.
And so there is a connection between us. The African Americans, the Dalits, the indigenous people around the world, Palestinian people, the Roma people, the Buraku people,
Yes.
the outcasts of Africa are still fighting for their rights, be it Nigeria, Ghana, Senegal. You go to Latin America, you find outcasts within the Mexican society or Brazilian society. And if we think about our histories through the vulnerability of love, the symbols of hate and diets of violence will be replaced by compassion, care, and solidarity.
I wonder, how did it feel to hear so many Americans associate caste only with India and have no idea about it elsewhere? And what was your experience going into the film and watching caste applied across different cultures?
I'm from the scheduled caste community, which is untouchable community. When I watch this movie, I understand the connection between global discrimination. And one can relate.
Yes, yes. It's fascinating, and I felt really uneducated when I went to India. There's so much that we don't know about each other. What are some of the American experiences that we can apply that same idea to, where there are people from all kinds of classes and cultures, yet in this particular space, whatever we might come up with, they all have to get along and behave as if they're equal?
Higher institutions.
In colleges? Okay.
I'm from New York, so I've been around cultures my whole life, but it's nothing like being in a classroom and being the only Black woman in a room full of white kids from different socioeconomic backgrounds, different cultures. I mean, I loved it because I'm learning from all these people, and a lot of people go into school ignorant. Even me, I have two white best friends. Like, everybody's ignorant about each other's culture because you don't know. We were never exposed to it.
Right.
But I think being in these spaces really opens your eyes and allows you to learn from other people.
Yeah.
When people are one of the like racist or colorist or whatever it may be, they don't really know any better.
It is harder to dehumanize a single person standing in front of you. harder to dehumanize an individual you've gotten the chance to know. Which is why people and groups who seek power and division don't bother with dehumanizing an individual. Better to attach a stigma, a taint of pollution to an entire group. Dehumanize the group, and you've successfully dehumanized every individual person within it.
After seeing the film, things that we don't identify as caste, we call it something else. But underneath, after you saw the film, you went home and started, I mean, this is what happened to me after I read the book, caste, that origin is based on. I started seeing it everywhere. I started saying, that's caste, that's caste. Anything come to mind?
First thought is sexism. The fact that women are still paid less for the same position. Even things like all of the conflicts that are happening in terms of book burnings for sexual orientation, bathrooms. I know in my personal community right now, there are votes about, trans students being able to use certain bathrooms. And I think we would refer to them as separate issues. But after seeing the film, I think more of all of them under the umbrella of caste.
Yeah, because underneath all of that is inherently saying, I can make these decisions about you because I'm better than you. I know better.
It's control.
It's control. It's dominance.
I was actually born in the Dominican Republic. So, it was brought on earlier that, there is a big issue with colorism. And with my own personal experience, I came here when I was 9 years old. And, in the Dominican Republic, I didn't consider myself Black because, you are so ingrained into the culture. And it wasn't until I moved to the United States that I was considered Black. And, I had an identity crisis. And I think that I have a lot of Dominican friends and even Dominican family that they're so surprised when I tell them that I am considered Black here. And that's just something that you go through life that they don't understand. But there is a connection there. You're making decisions for people that, we are on the same island, people that are also Black, that are also melanated, but we just point out because maybe they're darker or maybe they're from a different socioeconomic status as us.
So the way we identify people, and we decide how someone identifies, and we label them as that, whether that's who they are or not. Yeah. So like misgendering, it's just misidentifying.
I just graduated from college, so when I was at college, there was a certain system of who's important, who has influence. Are you on the cabinet of an organization? Those were usually the people that were making all the, social choices, even though it's just like parties, and it was so much more to it than that. And also just gaining social capital is something that I realized in college, that's something that you're not paying for, and nobody's telling you that you have to do. You think, oh, I'm just supposed to come here, go to school, do my work, turn it in, and everything's gonna be okay. But then when you graduate and you don't have that social capital, or you don't know how to work a room, those are certain things that you develop. But if you don't have somebody in your corner telling you, or a lot of first generation college students think like, I'm just keep my head down and stay in the books, when it's like, no, you're supposed to get out there, mingle, and get to know people so that you can gain more influence for yourself.
So social capital and the idea of a hierarchy, that the folks that are more visible, that are more charismatic, that are more vocal, that are more social, will be valued more than the folks who are more quiet or just kind of handling their college life in a different way. It's an interesting one, yeah.
When people celebrate certain festivals, you can easily understand there is a caste system they are protecting, because we cannot go and express our feeling there, or if you want to express, we have to follow their rituals. So that is where I can see the things are there. And then it is among students, like in university campuses, certain people only celebrate certain festivals, maybe like some culture related to some culture, but they are not thinking as a globally, like even if they are from India, they have to think what other festival that they can accommodate, and that never happened. And then I realize caste system exists. Even I ask someone to celebrate Ambedkar Jayanti in United States, or I will just wear a T-shirt of Ambedkar, it will be like creating big issue.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. So you all learned about Dr. Ambedkar in the film, right?
While he is a giant among Dalits, the world has failed to acknowledge his genius.
Dr. Ambedkar was separated from the kids of high caste so as not to pollute them.
When I was studying this, I was like, who? I'd never heard of him. Can you believe it? He's such a huge, not even a figure. I thought, oh, is he kind of like a Martin Luther King Jr.? No, it's way more. It is almost holy in a way, the way that folks talk about Dr. Ambedkar with such reverence. And to think that I had never, with all of my studies, been acquainted with him, this transformational figure of such a huge country in this world. But he's a Dalit man, and so that information just kind of never got to us. My mom, who loves the movie Hidden Figures, was like, he's a hidden figure. I was like, Mom, it's not quite the same, but maybe he was. But yeah, completely hidden. How would you describe who he is?
So like people will identify he's from the Dalit community. They may discriminate like how he came here, how he's improving yourself, and there will be issue with my progress, and they will just cast me out. Like they will say
other people who are familiar with what he represents would then identify you as Dalit. Right.
Did you feel like, in a way, he kind of became privileged as well? That people assume that he's a Dalit, and he got a privileged
So
access?
that context is really not there in the society. If that is there, I could come here with wearing that particular shirt, and on the campus of the New York, I can wear that shirt. But I didn't feel that confident. Like it's not about me, but they are like just making, oh, why you are wearing this? Is there any festival, or is there Ambedkar Jayanti? They just look at a different way. And I am a proud Ambedkarite.
Absolutely.
Just because of him, I am here.
Yes.
I came here in 2017. I was actually literally cried when I saw the Columbia campus, because he was the man.
You went there?
Yeah, his motto was to go for higher education and improve. He improved our self pride, and that's the thing I respect. We respect him most.
20,000 books were lost that night. Books filled with imagination and ideas and history.
For me, putting together the book burning scenes and thinking about book burnings in Nazi Germany and putting together that scene, we did it in the real place. So we traveled to Berlin, and they gave this black lady and her team permission to do a big bonfire in the middle of the actual place where it actually happened. So to have all of those background actors in the Nazi costumes, to have them hiling and marching and just recreating that was a phenomenal experience as a filmmaker. But also what we were doing was actually burning these books, fake books. But burning these books. There's no internet, there's no backup to these books. They didn't have 100 copies. You couldn't go on Amazon or whatever and order another one. Like, these were tender, sacred things that, some of them were lost forever. So the idea of trying to make knowledge disappear, to make sure that certain ideas are hidden, is something that I feel we're experiencing now, with certain books being banned, with folks deciding to control what we learn. Different people have different ideas about that, and so I wanted to just get a sense of, does someone have a different perspective, or how you feel about book banning and book burning, and was there any correlation as you watched the film?
I think it's incredibly dangerous. I remember that in the film there's this quote that I love, that they said that when you burn books, you burn humankind. And if we kind of, shift that to what we're living now, like maybe when you ban books, you're banning our humanity. And I think that is incredibly dangerous, because it is through books that ideas live for an incredible amount of time. And when you are talking about stories from minorities, you never want to erase that because of this same reason. And when you ban stories, you may be falling into caste, saying that those ideas are not worth listening, are not worth showing in a movie, are not worth reading about. And I think that in itself is caste.
As a Jewish person, seeing how that was the beginning of the Holocaust. From 1933, I believe, to 1945, there's about 10 million books burned and destroyed. Or far more than that. Point being, you can't erase all books. You can't erase an entire group of people. Hitler murdered 6 million Jews, yet in the end of all of that, the Jewish people were still there. And so that was something that immediately struck out to me. And I think that ties into what we're seeing right now today as well.
I mean, it's a great observation because we see that banning of knowledge, that kind of deciding what we learn is the precursor for horrible things, horrible things. And we're in that space right now where we are deciding what people get to learn and what is dismissed. And so I don't understand why that's not a ringing bell for the horrible things that are to come, because people aren't making the connections. And that's one of the things I hoped for the film is when you see what book burning, what it led to, where burning books led, where will banning books lead? And we're in the midst of that right now.
What can be taught and what can't be taught is also what type of people can exist and who can.
That's right.
And that is extremely dangerous to all of society at large.
Absolutely.
Even what they're doing in Florida, trying to like say that you can't teach certain things or teach certain parts of history. Like, we teach history because history repeats itself. Like, it's gonna happen again. And what, are you're not teaching kids certain things because it's gonna make them uncomfortable? Black people, any kind of minority is uncomfortable all the time in many situations. At all predominantly white institutions, Black people are uncomfortable all the time. So to make a white person, or not even a white person, just anybody in that higher class uncomfortable, like, they have to be uncomfortable. They have to learn.
A motto or mindset that I learned in 2020 when I was out taking part in Black Lives Matter was get comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Get comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Correct.
Nice.
If you're uncomfortable, then you're open-minded, you're in a vulnerable position, open to learning. If you are comfortable all the time in where you are, then you can become, over time, narrow-minded or closed-minded to learning something new. And therefore, waking up every single day with that idea of like, okay, where can I put myself in an uncomfortable position today?
Good. That's a healthy thing to do.
The movie is going to teach you to be vulnerable and to have the courage to have those tough conversations, because I think the brilliance of the storytelling is that, you know, you chose to tell the story through the journalist, and we see her going through so much grief. And for me, it didn't make me sad. It just made me vulnerable. And to see how she turned that grief into fuel and that she was able to, you know, have those tough conversations. And I think that the movie is, you know, telling us, have those tough conversations, even, you know, at a dinner table or watching TV with a grandmother. And those little moments where your guard is supposed to be down, have those little moments, and don't be afraid to have that little bit of friction, because when you are vulnerable, you disarm each other. And that is just the beauty of the film. And there's this subtle moments that they're not even the big moments, but where you see that she uses that. And I think that's beautiful.
When you are vulnerable,
You disarm people.
You disarm people.
Yeah,
Okay, you're not telling the truth. You told me you were 18.
I am.
Are you 18?
I am 18.
Okay, because you're talking like you're 54.
You're going to Colombia.
Dropping knowledge. Dropping knowledge. Wow, that's profound. Thank you for that. There's a big spectrum there of how to take the information in origin and internalize it. And I wondered for you all, how did the film spark any kind of action in you?
I am a fine arts major, so I feel like after I saw the film, I had the opportunity to kind of think about that when I was going through the last 2 semesters, and I did create some pieces more on like how I can relate to caste. I did a piece on females' navigation of society and coming to terms with men in spaces that they are not welcome. But it was a little bit more political than I'd ever gone in my art before. So it was new, but I ended up being the most proud of that piece than anything else.
That's fantastic.
And the very powerful message watching the movie that I have is, yes, there are people around the globe to support for the humanity, for the equal opportunity. And I'm going to take that on. And that is what my motto after watching the movie.
Wow, that's incredible. So you're going to incorporate it in that counseling work.
Yeah, yeah.
I would consider myself a community organizer. As my parents always said to me growing up, they would say, if you're so upset about something that you see in the world, then you get up and go fix it, because no one else will. And maybe not necessarily no one else will, but that idea of lighting a fire under you to get up and do that. And my way of seeing that and doing that is through working with politicians, meeting with legislators, and pressuring them, pushing them to fix and pass laws to reform in systems that do not represent everybody.
So I'm a spoken word poet, so I've consistently used my art and my voice to speak on issues. And I think after this film, I'm definitely writing a few spoken word pieces about it and performing them at a few slams. And I think I'm gonna use that knowledge to bring more awareness to the issue, because the movie really inspired me to start those conversations and be vulnerable.
Fantastic. So you're incorporating in your art.
Yes.
I love it. Amplifying the message. Tell me what you would tell a friend to encourage them to not be afraid and watch Origin on Hulu.
Well, you might cry. You might cry a lot, a few times, but it's a very powerful message. What you learn from it is very valuable, and it's something that can't really teach in the history class. Like, it's something you have to see, and it's something I want to learn more about. Like, I want part 2.
Ha ha, okay, part 2. Sounds good. How about you?
A big part of me that felt very empowered to action by the end of the movie, especially when Isabel was walking through the home and talking about how, these might not have been caused by you, but you're in it now. And if you turn away from it, that doesn't mean it stops. It just means you don't see it coming until it's too late.
Origin is very powerful, and to not be intimidated, to open your mind to hearing all of this knowledge and really learning how we think and why we think the way that we do, because I feel like it's just better to know, because we're thinking about this regardless. It's happening to us, whether you realize it or not. So don't be afraid to dive in. Yeah.
I watched the movie very recently, and it was a lot, because especially what's going on right now. So I've talked to some people because they asked, oh, what's Origin? And it was hard to explain everything, because you have to watch the movie to really understand it. When you want to make change, it doesn't have to be so big. You can just start small by having a small conversation. After you watch the movie, what are their reactions after? And then you see this difference.
Yeah.
And I think people need to see that difference. And when more people see that difference, oh, I thought of this first, but my mind changed because of this.
I think that's really what the film invites people to do, is just change your minds about things. That's okay. And maybe you'll walk in and nothing will change, but at least be open to be uncomfortable, open to explore. And that's what we invite people to do. I just have to say, I really enjoyed this conversation. I really enjoyed sitting with you all. I love that you all were open enough and kind enough and transparent enough to share a little bit of yourselves with me. And I feel like we're a little crew now. So I look forward to keeping in touch with y'all. And I just thank you for watching the film and really thinking about the film. I can tell that you all really considered it. And that means a lot to me. That's why we tell stories, is to try to connect with people. I feel like I connected with all of you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.